It seemed like it was pretty good. You're right, though. When I went to Baltimore 2 years ago, it was just the poster sessions on Sunday morning.
Yeah. So there's never really like presentations, and there's a reason for that. There's like a reason for that, because some people leave the conference on Saturday night. I mean, I know this is different, but still, like 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning is a little tough.
Yeah. I remember how lower the crowd was on Sunday. I guess I'll give a couple more minutes and then we'll start.
Yeah, I mean, if Jellissa no shows, that's no good, but it is what it is. All right, I'm actually gonna so tell Xarielle I'll be right back, because I realized that Magali's also presenting like right now. She's first in her round table. So let me just go check her out really quick.
No problem.
I can't believe there's 4 of them presenting right now. Okay, I'll be right back.
All right. All right, Xarielle, I don't know what's going on with Jellissa, but I'm feeling like we should probably start because it is a couple of minutes after 9. We don't have anybody here, but I guess we're recording it, so it's going to go up on the Facebook page. What's that? Oh no, just a thank you. Sorry. Here comes Jellissa. Excellent. All right, good. Both are here. Good morning, Jellissa. Oh, she's not on yet. She's just connected. So I'll give her time to connect, and then we'll get started. Good morning, Jellissa.
Good morning.
Good morning. It's just you and Xarielle in this one. So Xarielle goes first, and then Jellissa, and then you. Okay. Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and get started because it is a couple of minutes after. I'm hoping some more people will log on and join us. But welcome to the last set of presentations at the 2021 NRHC conference. I'm Professor Bruce Wigatow from Monroe College, and I'm very honored to be moderating this session with 2 Monroe College students, Xarielle Blanchette and Jellissa Lacon, and this roundtable discussion, which might be short, depending on how many people come in to go through this. Professor McDonald did say she would be back. So without wasting any more time, I will introduce Xarielle Blanchette with her presentation. So you can share your screen if you need to and do whatever you need to do, Xarielle.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Perfect.
What's happening? Okay. So, good morning, everyone. My name is Xarielle Blanchette. I am a former honor student. I recently concluded my undergrad studies at Monroe College in December last year. My major was in business management with a minor in marketing, just so you could get an idea of why I chose this topic. I'm very passionate about marketing and human behavior. So that's a little bit about why I chose this topic. My topic is the consumer brand relationship, balancing the voices. So this research seeks to explore ways in which businesses and consumers can collaborate with each other in order to achieve the goals for both parties, so that there is no exploitation and there's a balance of power. Before the rise of the internet, social media companies were more easily able to exploit their consumers. Today, most successful brands work with consumers and seek their input. This practice, however, also comes with certain consequences. Perhaps the ideal business consumer relationship is one where there is a balance of power. So the structure of the presentation will go as follows. Part one, we'll talk about the power of corporations. Part two, we look at the power of consumers. Part three, we'll look at how to balance the power. And then at the end, participants will be engaged in a dynamic discussion, hopefully, and then we'll have a little activity for you also. So part one, the power of corporations. We'll look at how companies abuse their power now. So one, monopolies. Two, terms of service agreements. Three, misleading advertising. So the relationship between brands and consumers is an important one. I am of the belief that this should be a symbiotic one. However, this is not always the case. Power of corporations. Monopolies allow companies to take advantage of consumers, especially through unethical pricing. Another way in which companies abuse their power is through terms and service agreements. I'm sure most of you do not read the entire terms of service agreements, and this allows companies to take advantage of us by sneaking in information. And thirdly, misleading advertising, which we'll look at now through a case study. So Naked Juice, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with this brand, but a few years ago, the company was served with a lawsuit for using misleading phrases like 100% fruit, all natural, non-GMO. However, their products were made with genetically altered soy and synthetic vitamins. The company defended its packaging, but acknowledged that some of its products contain synthetic vitamins, like I said. In the end, the company agreed to discontinue with its original packaging and adjusted the wording on the new packaging. So now we'll move on to part two, where we look at the power of consumers. So these are some ways in which the consumers may abuse their power. And I know this conference theme is looking at infrequently asked questions, and we often tend to look at how companies abuse their power and often neglect the fact that consumers do abuse their power sometimes. So we look at people support brands that share the same beliefs as them. And through this, especially in the age of social media, it is so easy for persons to jump on social media and call for the cancellation of a company because they do not believe in the same brand, same beliefs as them. And that is what we know today as cancel culture. They abuse their power also through the customer's kin belief, and this happens a lot in the hospitality industry as well. For example, someone goes to a hotel and they know that the hotel is going to do everything that they can to make sure the guest has a great stay. So they might take advantage of the hotel workers and become very demanding and make all these impossible requests just because they know the hotel is going to try their absolute best to satisfy their needs. And that's taking advantage of the company. Consumers also abuse their power through return policies, and we'll look further into that a little later into the presentation through our activity. And blog pages and reviews also allow customers to hurt companies. Like I said before, we live in an age of cancel culture, and it's easy for anyone to just hop onto the internet and express their views on a particular company, even if it's not true. And people are susceptible to believe in whatever they say. So we'll now look at a case study where I don't know if any of you remember it earlier in 2019, when many celebrities called for the boycott of Gucci over this this sweater that evoked a lot of racist feelings. As you can see in the image, it's this tall black sweater, covers your face with these big red lips, and that played into the stereotype that Black people have big lips, and a lot of people didn't like that. So because of the sweater evoke racist feelings, a lot of people use social media to convince thousands of people around the world to boycott the fashion brand. However, eventually Gucci decided to pull the sweater from their line. Thank goodness. So we'll now look at part 3, how we can find a balance of power. So some of the solutions, government protection of consumers, and this is also done through consumer protection laws such as the right to information and the right to choose. Because companies can easily deceive customers, like I mentioned before, through statement of omission. Another solution is consumers buying shares. And once consumers buy shares, they would have a vested interest in the company and wouldn't want to do anything that harms the company. 3, consumers becoming better informed and companies not withholding information. Like I said, it's important that we as consumers do as much as we can to seek information, but also on the other end, it's important that companies provide us with as much information as possible. Then is when we will have a balance of power. And last but not least, collaboration. I believe collaboration is one of the biggest ways in which you can find a balance of power between the consumers and the brands. And we'll now look at a case study. So I don't know how many of you remember when Popeyes reintroduced their chicken sandwich to the menu. The restaurant food chain Popeyes, they reintroduced their chicken sandwich, and that was the result of them listening to what their consumers wanted on social media. And this reintroduction of the chicken sandwich created a huge buzz, and it drove a lot of persons to go and support Popeyes. And that's a balance of power, listening to your consumers and following through on what they want. And in the end, it all worked out for the consumers and the company. I can't see what's in the chat, so maybe at this point you could tell me. We'll now open it up for questions and answers, and then we'll have an activity. So this activity is called Matchmaker, where I want to hear from you. You determine, I'll give you a few scenarios and you determine if it's a balanced relationship or not, and then we'll discuss. So scenario 1, company A allows its customers to return products free of charge if not satisfied. Scenario 2, after wearing a dress to a party, Ashley realized that she no longer likes how the dress looks on her. So the next day she returned the dress to the store to get her money back. Do you think this is a balance of power or not?
It's a good question. There's something that just doesn't sound right about it, because she actually wore it to a party before she returned it. So she used it before she returned it. But if the store allows that, then it doesn't sound like a balance of power to me, though. It sounds like more the consumer is taking advantage of the retailer at that point.
Anyone else want to chime in? I can't see if anyone else is in the session.
Jellissa has, I think, her hand up. Go ahead, Jellissa.
Yeah, I think it's like an abuse of power on the customer's part, because I agree with Professor Rigoteau. Like she did wear it already. Like she wore it out. So I feel like it's taking advantage of the company.
Right. And I agree as well. This is an example of an abuse of power. Like I said, earlier, we spoke about return policies, and customers often take advantage of this. And the thing is, with this, how is it an abuse of power? In the end, once you return something, companies don't really make any money from that. They often put them in their sales rack or have to throw them away, and that's not making a profit from that. So yes, they have certain return policies, but at the end of the day, if you're wearing something, it kind of drags down the value of the item. So I would say it's an abuse of power.
Absolutely. There's nothing, we're the only three here right now, Xarielle, so
Okay.
there's nothing in the chat box.
Okay, thanks. So the next scenario, Company B recently has come under scrutiny on social media as consumers feel the brand is based on a racial stereotype. Consumers are calling for a boycott of the brand. Company B changes the brand name and packaging. However, the consumers are still not satisfied. Do you believe this is a balance of power or not?
This one's a little more tricky, I think.
Yes.
Jellissa, you can go first if you'd like. I'm still thinking.
I think that it is a balance of power, but I think that the company should do more than just a brand name and packaging. I feel like they need to show that like they're truly listening to the public and their consumers, and actually like addressing it and like letting people know they understand where they were wrong, and like actually do the internal work to make sure that things like that don't happen again.
Right. So when putting my research together, my presentation together, I found it difficult to fully decide whether this was a abuse of power or a balance of power. So that's why I decided to put it in this section to hear your opinion. And I agree with what Jellissa said. The company did that. They did listen to their consumers, and however, the consumers still don't feel satisfied, but they're trying their best, as Jellissa said.
Yeah.
And that's all you can do, try your best. So
that's all right, exactly.
Yeah. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with this, but the Aunt Jemima brand, the previous scenario was based on this. A lot of people called for the boycott of Aunt Jemima brand because they felt that the brand was tied to racism and slavery. So the brand, they did this whole repackaging and they changed the name to the Pearl Mill Company. However, a lot of the consumers aren't still satisfied. Some of them feel that the Pearl Milling Company, it also feels a bit like a slave estate sort of thing, or a lot of them also feel that the packaging, it just feels like a knockoff of the original brand. So let's discuss. Did you have any other opinions about this topic?
Now that I see this, and remember, I'm older than you two. I remember, I still have this buttermilk pancake, the exact thing on the left in my pantry right now. And I love their pancakes. I love their syrup and, all that kind of stuff. And I got so used to it. I never really thought of it. Obviously not being African American, I understand that, but I never really thought of this as being racist before. I don't see the problem as much, but I'm coming at it from a white male perspective, so it's hard to see beyond your own perspective.
Yeah. So I grew up with the Aunt Jemima brand, and as a Black person, I never really thought about that until you go and look at the history of the company and why they chose the lady as the face for their packaging. Yeah. Like I said, it's great that the company is rebranded, and they're doing their best they can.
Yeah.
And that's all you can do as a company. Continue to listen to your consumers.
Especially when you think about how long the company's been here. It even says since 1889
Yeah.
on the second package, and how many years, over 100 plus years of one thing and then switching to another. So they did at least listen.
All right, so awesome. To close off, I'm going to say, answer the question, what is the ideal consumer brand relationship? And I believe that is a relationship where companies allow consumers to feel valued so that they are willing to support the brand and not take advantage of it. So thank you for listening to my presentation. Have a great day. Continue to be safe and stay healthy. And if you want to reach out to me for further questions, you can reach me at this email address.
Great job, Xarielle, as usual. Great job.
Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. Before we move to Jellissa, since this is a roundtable discussion, if anybody wants to add anything, I figured I'd give anyone a chance. We had a new person pop on. Thank you for coming on, Michael. If anyone has anything they'd like to add to this before we move on. Okay. All right, then we will move on then to Jellissa's presentation. I know this is an all Monroe College presentation. That's why I'm wearing my my polo shirt today. So Jellissa, you can share your screen and you can start whenever you're ready.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you guys see my screen okay?
It's coming up right now. There we go.
Okay. It's good?
Yep.
All right. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My roundtable discussion is going to be on finding solutions to the impossible problem of food apartheid. My name is Jellissa. I'm currently a freshman at Monroe College, and I am very passionate about food discrimination, which is why I chose this topic. Now, please raise your hand if you've heard of any of the following. Has anybody here heard of food apartheid? Okay, that's okay. That's okay, because we're gonna cover all of these things in the upcoming slides. Has anyone here heard of food deserts? No, I'm loving this. I like this, because this means I get to let you guys know what all of this is. Has anybody heard of food sovereignty? Okay, that is completely A-okay. By the end of my roundtable discussion, we will have covered what food apartheid is, what food sovereignty is. We'll know the different forms of food apartheid, and we're going to know what food deserts are, who are affected by these, the impacts, who it impacts, why it's important, and some solutions. So what is food apartheid? Food apartheid looks at the whole food system in its entirety, taking into account income, race, geographical location, and it determines how social and racial inequalities make accessing fresh, healthy food difficult in low-income areas. So farming inequality and its roots. What does this mean? This means that when the European colonizers first came to these lands, they took farming, they took on like ingredients, they took land from Native Americans and indigenous peoples, and now how that translates into modern day farm subsidies mainly go to white farmers. A group of Black farmers actually recently filed a lawsuit against the government because of this type of discrimination. Approximately 98% of the farmable land in America is owned by white farmers, meaning that a lot of these vegetables, a lot of the food origins are staying in this one demographic. And what this means is the control of where food goes is staying within the hands of this one demographic. So food apartheid and food deserts are rooted in discrimination and capitalism. And we're gonna find out why. So what's a food desert? Food deserts are any area with limited access to affordable and nutritious food, meaning, yes, there may be food located inside of these food deserts. It doesn't mean that it's completely barren of food, but it means that accessing affordable food, whereas food deserts are commonly in low-income communities. So being able to afford food may not be easy for everybody who lives there, and the nutritious aspect of the food, right? We may not see a lot of nutritious foods. So food deserts consider the type and quality of the food available. Again, there's food there, but the quality is going to be very low. And then considering accessibility to the food through the size and proximity of the food stores. And we're going to go more into depth of this in the upcoming slides. So welcome to Far Rockaway, a federally labeled food desert. Who lives in Far Rockaway? It's predominantly Black, so Black individuals make up 47.1% of the population, and Latino individuals make up 25.2% of the population as the next highest demographic living in that area. Now I have a little true or false for everybody. True or false that fast food contributes to food deserts? Feel free to drop it in the chat. Feel free to unmute yourself.
I would say true.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with true, copycat, and everyone else.
Yeah, I would say true as well.
Bet. Okay, that's good. You guys are right. So food deserts do contribute to fast food does contribute to food deserts because food deserts contain an abundance of fast food chains selling cheap meat and dairy-based food high in fat, salt, and sugar. So again, most times, well, a lot of times you will see that food deserts are populated with fast food. And again, this is not good for your body. It's not good for the consumers, especially on a day-to-day basis. So these are the food and drinks that are found in Far Rockaway. As you can see, there's a ton of fast food, some Chinese stores, delis and bodegas, some liquor stores, 2 small, poor quality grocery stores, and no big one-stop supermarket. So that just goes and reinforces again that yes, there's food there, but it's not nutritious. The quality is bad. Most times you'll see that milk expires in like 4 days when you get it out of the store. The meat is not at its peak. The vegetables are dull. You have to travel a great distance to get to a big stop supermarket. And all of this is encompassing what a food desert is. Now I have more, so please comment in the chat or unmute. Unmuting is preferred. What fast food exists in your neighborhood or around your school or even work?
All of them around me, especially out here on Long Island. I mean, you know, there's so much of it in the Bronx where I teach.
Mm-hmm.
We've got Taco Bell, Subway, you know, McDonald's, Burger King. So pretty much all of it I know because I eat there.
Thank you.
Yeah, same. I live in the Bronx, and like you said, there's a lot of fast food places around me.
Like
Taco Bell, McDonald's, Popeyes.
Okay. So do you guys think that you live in a food desert or go to work, go to school in a food desert?
It sounds like it from the way you described it. It was something, as a term, like I said before, I did not know, but it certainly sounds like it, but that might just be where my own taste takes me.
Right. I feel you.
We have a grocery store, you know, multiple grocery stores, big ones. And so, I mean, even in Far Rockaway, wouldn't they have grocery stores nearby, like kind of alleviating some of that pressure? And I get part of the reason why it's easy to go to McDonald's. It's cheap, it's fast, but it's harder. It takes more time to go to a grocery store and cook all your stuff. But I mean, they've got to have grocery stores out there, right?
So yes, 2 small, poor quality grocery stores. So what this means is you're not going to find everything that you need to cook in one grocery store. Yeah. You're going to have to move around, and it's also still not at its freshest. It's not at high quality. So regardless of it being there, it's still not nutritious or as beneficial as it could be, right? Whereas, well, in your community, you may see a lot of grocery stores, and I bet chances are you don't need to go to several of them. You only need to stop at one, because that one grocery store will have everything that you need. And the quality of those produce, you probably see bright, appealing vegetables. That's not the case in these grocery stores. As a matter of fact, I've gone in some of these grocery stores to buy things to cook for my family, and I've sifted through several vegetables just because it didn't look appealing. It didn't look at its freshest. Some might be already spoiling. Like, that's not beneficial for anybody to live off of. And a lot of people are not going to these fast food places every day because they enjoy the taste of McDonald's. It's not, it's more so because there is nothing, what other choice do they have? I know that there have been days personally for me where, yes, we do have stuff in the house, but sometimes, those things, or even if you want to go get food and you're hungry, my choices will be all this fast food. So every day I'm just picking a new fast food to eat from, whereas I know where I went to school in Manhattan, after school, if I was hungry, I could stop at a Just Salad, right? And a Just Salad is a healthy alternative. It's not fast food, but it's there. It's somewhere where you can eat out at. It's a walk in and walk out type place, but it's meant to be healthy. It's meant to be nutritious, right? But we don't find stores like that in food deserts. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I work out here on Long Island, which is probably not a food desert because, like Michael mentioned, there are giant supermarkets. I mean, I can walk to a couple of giant supermarkets right near me. But in the Bronx, there really aren't. Even the one supermarket we had near the Bronx campus is closed. The Morton Williams that was there, and it was a small one, and didn't have everything as well. But you're exactly right.
Thank you. So what does this mean, right? This means that inhabitants of Far Rockaway do not have consistent access to healthy foods. This leads to health problems such as hypertension, diabetes, obesity. In fact, childhood obesity is actually is something that's very high in the United States, and its foundations linked to food deserts, right? Because thinking about the demographics of the kids who are obese, where they're coming from these low-income communities, which in turn are food deserts. And this also means food insecurity. A lot of people don't know where their next meal is coming from, well, their next nutritious meal is coming from, right? Because they don't have access to consistent, healthy food. The cycle of food apartheid. So starting from the beginning to now, it starts with those farming subsidies, right? And the land that stays in white hands. And then because it's a capitalistic system, those hands choose where the food goes. They choose which supermarkets we're gonna send this food to, which communities we're gonna go to. And then these supermarkets, they decide where they're going to put their grocery stores, right? So they decide their locations, and they're steering off of low-income communities because people in low-income communities do not have the money to spend at their pricing. This goes back into affordable food, right? If food is affordable, more people can have access to it. So they're going into these more upscale suburban areas where the people do have money. And so these food deserts are left with low quality food, low quality markets that, again, don't have the freshest food. And that's really just where it's where the food deserts stem from, where the health issues stem from. And yeah. So then these low-income communities are left with low-quality food. The inhabitants acquire many health issues. The doctors prescribe medicine, and then this just means more revenue for the capitalist system. We're not solving food deserts, we're just acquiescing it. So what is the solution? We covered food deserts and food apartheid and all these things. So what's the solution? I know you guys are dying to know. So I'm gonna let y'all know. Solutions to food deserts are urban gardens, bus stop farmer markets, community outreach. So urban gardens are a great way for community strengthening, for awareness and food from start to finish, how it starts from a seed to how it ends up on your plate, getting to see that that process. It encourages healthy dietary habits because people are seeing food at its freshest. They're going to see a bright red juicy tomato and wonder why the ones in their low quality supermarkets are palish pink. So this encourages like the appreciation for the food, the understanding of where this food comes from, the understanding of how it impacts and nourishes your body. And then we have bus stop farmer markets. So the idea for bus stop farmer markets is to put food where people already are. Considering that these are low-income communities, a lot of people do not have access to cars. They are taking public transportation, such as a bus. So, and a lot of people don't have the time to be able to go to a grocery store all the time. So what do? They can stock up on groceries at these bus stop farmer markets. We're giving food, we're giving these people healthy food at their convenience. And who doesn't love that? Who doesn't love things at their own convenience? And lastly, community outreach. Many people don't know about urban gardens or bus stop farmer markets, or some people may not understand its importance and why it's in their community. This is why it's important to get the word out and educate people, letting people know that, hey, we have this urban garden and it's for us, right? And around the whole things of gentrification and things like that, some people, when they see something new in their community, they are scared at first. They might push and reject the idea away, right? So letting people know, like, hey, this is for us. Starting those conversations, like, did you notice that urban garden that we may have? Did you notice these bus stop farmer markets? Do you understand why this food is here? Do you see that you can plant and farm your own food for free, right? So that goes into community outreach. Now, have you guys noticed any community gardens in your neighborhood? I know for me, Far Rockaway does have a community garden. It's been, I think it's been there since about like 2017. I could be wrong, but it's because we live in a food desert, obviously people in the community wanted to do something that could kind of alleviate its impacts and stuff. I don't think that it's been doing much. I know that we've had like so many conversations about trying to get supermarkets into Far Rockaway and things like that. But again, people don't want to come to a food desert and et cetera, the chain. But I have a community garden. It's beautiful. It has chickens. But on to the next. Have you or anyone you know ever grown your own produce?
Yeah.
Early in my marriage, we did until we got old and tired. But we did. But just to answer the question, to go back, I realized during the pandemic, there have been some, what I would consider community gardens in my area, for people who are, suffering and can't get out as much. But I think prior to that, it wasn't really existed. But I have grown. We tried to grow tomatoes the last couple of years and, with medium success. But
I feel like during the pandemic, a lot of people went into gardening because I realized that a lot of the food stuff were a bit scarce. I saw that a lot of people were getting into food gardening, herbs and foods and all those stuff that they can do.
Yes. So my grandmother actually gardens a lot and grows her own food. Well, I got her this chili plant, which is like a great way to have something that you can easily have access to for free. And we also have like a vineyard in our backyard. It's not too crazy big, but it bears fruit sometimes. Would you guys be interested in growing your own produce?
yes.
Yeah. Me too. I want to start. What are some of your favorite veggies and fruits?
I love vegetables. So I love corn, peas, spinach, and I love most fruits too. I love pineapple, oranges, bananas.
I like spinach dip.
Mm.
I don't think it counts as a vegetable if there's sour cream in there, Jellissa. Sour cream and vegetable.
I like mangoes, pineapples.
Emily added in the chat all fruits and vegetables. So it's good because I know a lot of, when you were younger, we resist vegetables. Right. I remember my own daughter resisting vegetables. Now she eats everything.
I love them.
She's 28. Yeah.
So keeping in mind all these favorite veggies and fruits, how awesome would it be if you guys were able to grow it in your backyard, right? Having access to it, you don't have to go buy from the store because you already have some, and that's all, period. So yeah, just doing that. And so what is the ultimate goal? We found the solutions to food apartheid, food deserts. What is the ultimate goal here? Eradicating food deserts, right? We talked about how food deserts aren't solved, they're acquiesced, right? But we need to eradicate these food deserts. How, you may ask? By making food affordable and accessible and promoting the purchase of healthy food. Remember, a lot of people don't understand why they should buy one tomato over another tomato. They understand why some people don't even understand that they live in food deserts. I didn't know that I lived in a food desert until like 8 months ago, right? Well, and during the pandemic, these conversations started sparking more, and we started having these conversations about food apartheid. So just having that conversation and that outreach, that community outreach. So what would be the result? Significantly lowered health problems in low-income communities. Remember those diabetes, those heart problems, because that is a reflection of what people are eating. And a bonus would be helping fight childhood obesity, because remember, it's rooted in food deserts. Now, how do we get to eradicating these food deserts? Food sovereignty. So food sovereignty is a movement that's been growing from farmers, fishers, indigenous peoples, and landless workers. So people who contribute to the cycle of food but do not get the credit or like the recognition or the money, honestly. So it promotes a grassroots food system that involves citizen input and recognizes food as a need over a commodity. Remembering that right now this food is a capitalistic system, right? So it's more so if you can afford the food, then you get to eat the food. Food sovereignty is looking at food as, we know that we all need it, so we're not going to let you guys starve. And it also builds traditional knowledge and rejects technology that undermines or contaminates local food systems. So like GMO and pesticides is a big no-no. It optimizes the ecosystem, so getting food that is in season and when it's growing, instead of like when like something is out of season and you walk in a supermarket and you see it anyway. Yeah, no, because we're not doing that extra work to be able to do that on an off season where it's not at its best. You will be optimizing the ecosystem, getting food when it's in season, getting food as it rotates, and respecting the work of all food workers. It rejects privatization of natural resources. So like things that you could literally get for free in your backyard. There no privatization of it, okay? Like you deserve to have access to a free thing, okay? That's for you. And it also reduces the distance between food producers and consumers and places control in hands of local food producers. So what this means is, taking, for example, those urban gardens, the people who are planting food there, if a farmer is in your community farming food, they can sell that produce to the community, sell that produce to supermarkets in the community, right? So we're feeding our communities and creating this this chain of healthy food and healthy practices, so they would decide where this food goes. They would decide the quality of this food, which should be good, right? So yes. And now, food for thought. Do you think food sovereignty is feasible? Please tell me why or why not.
I would like to think it's feasible, but I'm not quite sure the food companies would lower the prices enough to make it feasible in the society that we live in. It should be. And I think during the pandemic, like I said, more people are giving away food and things of that nature. And some of the supermarkets around me are giving away some food. So hopefully maybe that will continue once and if the pandemic ends. Right.
I want to say that in terms of lowering the prices, I feel like if the food is local, right, then they would set the prices. And being in a local community, people would be taking that into account. People would be able to even give away food for free if that system is working, right? So considering planting a vegetable, growing enough, having leftover seeds from those vegetables, just being able to replant, right? It's not as costly is what I want to say, right? Because it's not say like a big huge farm that you have like deep in Pennsylvania and you're shipping it to like these mass supermarkets. It's more so you're just focusing on like either one or even two like supermarkets in your community and focusing on getting produce there and still having such a high volume in your community that you're able to say, so remember, we're looking at it as a need rather a commodity. So if you do have someone who's like, hey, maybe I can't afford this, like here, like we understand that you need this, right? So just looking at it in that way.
Yeah. Emily makes a good point also. We need a contribution from all individuals involved in a particular society, and that society.
Yes.
Jellissa, so while you're speaking, I Google mapped Far Rockaway, and so I see one key food, and but then I see a lot of the supermarkets, delis, and corner stores, and I think there's a distinction too between if there's a hierarchy in grocery stores. Where does key food fall in that hierarchy? Yeah, we all kind of know, right? I've been to them before. But and one of the thing when you're talking about this, like trying to, would Whole Foods ever locate in Far Rockaway? As like, so what's the business driving that decision? It's like, could you see that happening? I don't think so. But what it made me think of is all these bigger or nicer, what we perceive to be nicer grocery stores are hopping out of the poor neighborhoods. And there's in 1977, there was a new law called the Community Reinvestment Act. And what that did, 1977, right? What it did is it told banks, you can't skip over the poor neighborhoods, right? And it forced banks, if you're in New York City, if you want to be over here in the rich neighborhood, you also have to have a location in the poor neighborhood. So what that was doing is giving access, cheaper financial access to poorer people, poor neighborhoods. So there's a law that restricted banks from doing this. So maybe one of the solutions for this would be to try to get the governor or the state legislatures to say, hey, banks can't do this because we need poor neighborhoods need financial access as well. And maybe we make regulations for Whole Foods. Hey, you can't just skip this neighborhood and go to the rich neighborhoods. So I think that might be kind of there's an analogy there between, and I actually was just reading up on it. It's called a credit desert, not a food desert, but a credit desert. And it's unfortunate because in these poor neighborhoods, what we find is pawn shops popping up, check cashing places, and all that stuff is much more expensive, which leaves poorer neighborhoods in a poorer situation.
We refer to them as low income. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So we refer to neighborhoods as low income, and it's also because low income communities are redlined. So a lot of times if some business venture is looking for somewhere to settle, this is going to be marked off like food deserts are going to be marked off as not, as not the best to settle in, which is hurtful to the community. Food apartheid is a vast, it's a newer term to describe food deserts because food deserts are not always an accurate term of the depth of the situation, right? A food desert it's not a natural thing and what a desert is, right? Deserts are natural. Food deserts are not in the way that they come to be. They do have a history, they stem from something, right? So considering a lot of what food is and what food represents, where it comes from, a lot of food is currently in the white populace's hands in terms of deciding where it goes, in terms of deciding in terms of even looking at who owns everything, right? Who owns the arable land? Who owns these supermarkets? Who owns these banks? Who owns like just basically everything, right? And then also determining where is food coming from. So now that the land is in white hands and it's being grown on that land and it's being shipped out, it's still staying within one demographic. But before 98% of the arable land in America belonged to white farmers, right? Considering where that land was, whose hands that land was in, and even considering the history of this entire country, right? And its history of where food comes from. Ingredients like squash, corn, potatoes, those are all ingredients that are native to Native Americans, right? Those all have been grown by Native Americans, even considering the history of corn, where Native Americans were growing it and colonizers from Europe just came and like seen corn. Oh, wow, corn looks great. I would love some. And instead of asking, just taking it home, right? But they didn't understand that corn has to be treated a certain way to be able to produce nutrients and to be able to be nutritious to the body. So then coming back and now like taking the people, it's just like, it's a whole history there, right? Of how food has been traveling from one place to another, even considering restaurants, right? Where a lot of food also goes and shipments going there. Who are the chefs at these restaurants? What are the menus? What's being on this menu? And a lot of times you'll hear from a famous chef like, this dish has been in my family for years, right? Dating back to my greats, right? But who was in those households and who was cooking? I think that those are great questions to be thinking of in terms of the origin of food. That's why my slide earlier was like farming roots, rooted in like theft and slavery, right? Because this is the origin of food, especially in pertaining to America specifically. This is the origin of food and where it's been coming from and how it's made its way to today, right? And then considering as well that low-income communities are, again, why we don't call them deserts, because they're not natural. Who lives in these communities is very intentional, right? We push these demographics into these one communities, and then we put a bunch of fast food in there to quote unquote appease what will be their hunger, but it's also contributing to other factors like health problems, right? And then we're back to this whole thing again. So this is why like urban gardens are trying to find a way to combat this oppressive system. Food right now in America is an oppressive system. It is, it's a big deity, which is why food apartheid encompasses, right, looking at everything from social factors, from economical factors, from everything, looking at how socially it impacts people, how physically it impacts people, who's being affected by this, the location, who are located in these communities, where are these communities located, right? What do these communities look like? If you were to walk into a food desert or any low-income community, what you would see are bodegas on every block. You would see delis everywhere, a bunch of fast food. If you're walking through Manhattan right now on like 59th Street or even, like 59th Street or even West 50th right now, you will see like on every corner, there's like this fancy store, right? People have money to be able to even do that, to be able to open up. And also everything is made feasible for them, right? Considering like who's living there, the kind of jobs that they're able to get. That's a whole different story and a deeper thing, right? But just looking at comparison of a food desert to a wealthy neighborhood, you're going to see the difference of what's on every block. You're going to see a grocery store like 5 minutes from each other, and they're big, because I've had to go to school in Manhattan real quick, and I know I needed something because I went to a culinary school, and it was so easy to just hop in a store and have a whole grocery aisle full of things that I had never heard of, and be able to pick it up and run to school. So, but I wouldn't have been able to do that if I was living in Far Rockaway and I needed something like a kumquat, right? Like, Manhattan has kumquats in regular stores, right? And I'm not gonna find a kumquat in any grocery store inside of Far Rockaway. So just those are things that so I thought of. But yeah, does anybody else have an opinion on if food sovereignty is feasible. I will say that I think food sovereignty is feasible, but it depends, right? I feel like everybody in the community needs to like be aware of why you're heading into this and to be on board, because it is a community effort. I feel like food sovereignty as a whole, like in all food deserts at one time, is, I feel like that may not be feasible. But even if you're like starting in one community, right, and you just like knocking on doors or just letting people know, right? Having those conversations is how people are educated. Because I literally just told my friend who I grew up in Far Rockaway with, that we do live in a food desert, and explained to her why, like, after we're leaving like the community outreach center and after we leave the park, we're going to either Subway or Popeyes or getting pizza every single day, because there's nothing nutritious to eat. If there was a Just Salad in Far Rockaway, we would be there, right? We eat salad. We don't love fast food. We're not in love with fast food. That's not the reason why we go. It's because that's what's available. So I think starting in one community could make it feasible. I just think the approach and how you go about it is extremely important. These are my references. Thank you guys for tuning into my presentation. If you guys have any more questions, you can feel free to email me at jellissa.ft@gmail.com. I would be more than happy to answer any more questions about food apartheid. Thank you.
Great job, Jellissa. Both Xarielle and Jellissa did amazing jobs. So, and thank you, Jellissa, for making me hungry. So I don't need much push to get me to be hungry, but this definitely worked. So does anybody, before we wrap up, and I see we have a little bit of time, maybe we can pop over to one of the other sessions. Does anybody have anything else that, any other comments or questions for either one of these two amazing presenters?
I would just say, like, well, number one, I think both of you guys worked really hard on your presentations. You know, I'm not biased or anything. But I think that you guys put together really good presentations. I wish we had some more folks in the audience to kind of see them, but we'll get the recording out there. But the one thing that I would just ask you guys to contemplate, you know, is because in some cases, you know, with your two topics, they're very different, right? One is about, you know, kind of the consumer brand relationship, and one is about, you know, food deserts, right? But I think, you know, I see some common ground between the two presentations in terms of people needing to take action, right? You know, like in Xarielle's presentation, you know, talking about how consumers need to be more, you know, speak up more, right? You know, support companies that have causes that are worthwhile, right? You know, and in some cases, you know, act ethically themselves. And I think the same thing is true with what Jellissa is saying in terms of people having to come together to, you know, kind of decrease these food deserts, right? Make food deserts a thing of the past, you know? So I'm just curious, like, if you guys see the connections between your presentations and, you know, the role of the everyday person, right? I think that's a key component to your presentations. Do you guys agree?
Yeah, I I see the connection as well. Like I just typed in the chat. I also feel like a common theme is the importance of companies listening to consumers. Like Jellissa said, she would love if she could go to a place where she could eat salad. And yeah, it's important for companies to listen to the consumers as well.
Great, good answer.
I also see a relationship. I would agree. I also think it's important on both the different ways that we kind of tackled like aspects of food, where Xarielle kind of like mentioned like the branding aspect and like the community outreach aspect, which is just as important as like how food affects people. And then if you consider like her one example of the Aunt Jemima bottle and its history, and then food deserts and food deserts history, it kind of shows like why someone might take the Aunt Jemima battle so seriously, even though it's like years later, because it's still rooted in something. And why would you want to represent something that's rooted in something negative, or rooted in something that's impacted so many people and still impacts people today?
Definitely.
Okay. Great. Any other questions or comments? All right. Then let me just make a couple of quick announcements. Just want to remind everybody that the awards ceremony and conference closing is today at 11 o'clock. And then later this week, I believe it is Thursday, if I remember correctly, it is. Thursday is the NRHC Expo and Graduate Fair. So hopefully most of you can attend those as well. And otherwise, I just want to say thank you. I think Xarielle and Jellissa did an amazing job, as I knew both of you guys would. I know both of you. So it's always a pleasure to work with students from Monroe, students from other colleges. It's just, I love these conferences. This is only my second one being involved, but I've really enjoyed both of them tremendously. And so thank you very much. And thank you everybody for attending. And hope you have a great rest of your day. And you still have some time to head over to one or the other. Yeah,
yeah. If you guys want to jump in, Christina and Magali might be still doing like Q&A at the end of their session. So so you can find their links in the portal if you guys want to jump in. I'm going to try and jump back into one of those.
Okay.
All right. See you guys in a bit.
Thanks, Professor Bicatow. Thank you. Great job, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Great job, Jellissa. See you later.